Animorphs, Megamorphs number 4, Back to Before, Chapter 2. My name is Jake. I live in a normal American city, in a normal American state. I love my mom and my dad. I even love my big brother, Tom. I like basketball and hate math and get a little down when it rains for more than one day. I think those little Audi TTs are cool, but if I had the money, and was old enough, I'd probably drive a Jeep. I live on burgers and fries and have never voluntarily consumed a Brussels sprout. My room is a mess. My homework is late. My class notes are so disorganized they cannot be read by anyone except Marco, who has been living off my notes for 5 years or more, and sometimes has to interpret them for me. I cried the day Michael Jordan retired, and I can still tell you what time it was, what day, week, month, hour, minute, and second, what I was wearing, and what I was eating when Mark McGuire banged his record homer. I'm a kid with a dog, and parents and teachers and friends, just a kid. I have these nightmares. Sometimes I'm a termite trapped inside a piece of wood, can't get out and the clock is ticking, tick-tock, tick-tock, can't escape, wooden walls and blackness all around me, pressing me tight. Sometimes I'm flying and my wings just aren't there and I'm a mile up in the sky, falling and thinking, I can't fly! I can't fly! Sometimes still, even now, I see the dark red eye of Krayak, and feel his malice reaching for me all across the millions of light years. But the worst dream is just me and Cassie, and we're standing in the forest somewhere. She's outlined in light, you know, like there's a bright light hidden behind her, and it's almost like she's shining, and there's this cave, and I'm telling her to go in, and she's looking at me with trust in her eyes, looking at me and loving me, and believing in me, and trusting me, and I'm telling her to go into the cave. I'm the leader of the Animorphs. I don't know how that happened. It was some doom pronounced by Marco. Why me? Because, Marco said, because it has to be. We were 5 kids taking a shortcut home from the mall at night. There was a ship. There was an alien. There was the destructive worm of knowledge. You are not alone. You are not safe. Nothing is what it seems. No one is who they seem to be. The knowledge of betrayal and terror. The awareness of evil. And then, the power. The power made us responsible, see? Without the power, the knowledge would just have been a worm of fear eating up our insides. Bad enough, but it was the power that turned fear into obligation, that laid the weight on our unready shoulders. We could become any animal we touched, the Andalite told us. Power enough to win? No. Power enough to fight? Ah, yes, just enough, little Jake. Here is just enough power to imprison you in a cage of duty, to make you fight. Help me. I'm cold. Another battle, another horror. Couldn't anything make it end? Was there no way out? Was I trapped, fighting till one by one my friends died or went nuts? I lay on my bed, stared up at the ceiling. Help me, please. I'm cold. Into the cave, Cassie. All for what? For nothing. To delay the Yeerks, but never to win, and someday to lose. Was there no way out?
There's always a way out, Jake the Mighty, a voice said. My Lord Krayak holds out his omnipotent hand to you, Jake the Yeerk Killer, Jake the Ellimist's tool.
I sat up. I knew the voice. The Drode stood by my desk. It wasn't large. It perched forward like one of those small dinosaurs. It had mean, smart eyes and a humanoid head. It was wrinkled, dark green or purple maybe, so dark it was almost black. The mocking mouth was lined with green. The Drode was Krayak's creature, his emissary, his tool. Krayak was evil, a power so vast, so complete that only the Ellimist could keep him in check. A balance of terror, evil and good checking each other, limiting each other, making deals that affected the survival of entire solar systems. Go away, I said to the Drode.
But you called me!
Go back to Krayak, leave me alone. The Drode smiled. He got up and moved closer. Closer till his face was only inches from my own.
There is a way out, the Drode whispered. Say the word, and it never was, Jake. Say the word, Jake, and you never walked through the construction site. Say the word, and you know nothing. No weight on your shoulders. Say the word.
Go away, I said through gritted teeth.
How long till your cousin Rachel loses her grip? You know the darkness is growing inside her. How long till Tobias dies? A bird! A bird! How can he ever be happy? How long till Marco is forced to destroy his own controller mother? Will he survive that, do you think? How long, Jake? Till you kill Tom? Then what dreams will come, Jake the Yerk Killer?
Get out of here. Crawl back under your rock.
It will happen, Jake. You know that. The cave. The day will come. You know what the cave is, Jake. You know what it means, that dark cave. You know that death is within. When she dies, when Cassie dies, it will be at your word, Jake.
I covered my face with my hands.
My master Krayak offers you an escape. In his compassion, great Krayak has struck a deal with that meddling nitwit Ellimist. Krayak would free you, Jake. Krayak would free you all. All will be as it would have been if you had simply taken a different path home.
I saw that moment again, at the mall, deciding whether to take the safe, well-lit, sensible way home, or the route that would take us through the construction site and to a meeting that would change everything. Undo it all. No more war, no more pain and fear and guilt.
Just one word, Jake,
the Drode whispered.
No, two, I think. One must not sacrifice good manners. 2 words, and it never was. 2 words, and you know nothing, have no power, no responsibility.
What words?
One is Krayak, the other is please.
I wanted to say no. I wanted... Rachel! I cried. Cassie was screaming like she'd never stop. I grabbed Cassie, pulled her to me, dragged her with me, couldn't look back, couldn't see what had happened to my beautiful cousin. Phew! The Andalite fired again and again. I saw a ray gun on the floor, clasped in a dead hand. I pried it free. I was holding Cassie by the hand, pulling her along with me. Phew! I felt the charge jolt my fingers. I let go of a hand that was no longer there. Cassie sizzled and disappeared, simply evaporated. I stared at the blank space where she had been. I stared at my hand. I was moaning. A weird sound, moaning, like a hurt animal. No sound that any human would make. Come! The Andalite snapped. I realized everything was quiet now. The Hork-Bajir bodies were everywhere. The air reeked of charred flesh. I followed the Andalite, stumbling blindly, down dim corridors, past locked steel hatches. A hatch opened. A Hork-Bajir head appeared. It stared in shock. Andalite! Flop! The Andalite struck. I realized now that it had been hurt again. It was staggering, bleeding, but determined. The bridge! Have to reach the bridge! We emerged from the hallway into a wider, more open space. There were display monitors that seemed to hang, formless, in midair. 3 monstrously huge centipedes manned controls. And standing in the middle of it all was another Andalite. Older looking, different. The Andalite called Axe stopped suddenly. He was weaving like a drunk. Visser Three, he said.
Yes, and you must be the Andalite who escaped from the wreck of the dome ship. How enterprising of you.
He's one of your people, I muttered. No, the Andalite said. He sounded weary. Looks can be deceiving. The Andalite raised his weapon. Whap! The creature called Visser Three struck with his tail. The Andalite stared stupidly down with his main eyes at the stump of his arm. The Andalite was between me and Visser Three. I raised my own weapon. Visser Three lunged. Fired. Phew! Missed. I hit the ground. Then Cassie fired. Phew! Cassie? Visser Three's upper body sizzled and disappeared. The deer-like lower half fell over, lifeless.
No, no, no!
It was a voice that dripped sarcasm and contempt, but it was annoyed, too.
She's dead! The girl was dead! This really is too much!
Cassie came rushing over to me. She knelt down and helped me to my feet. The Andalite stared weirdly at me, and more so at Cassie. It's breaking up, Cassie said. What is? She shook her head. I don't know. I don't know what to call it, but it's falling apart. The Andalite calmly shot the 3 big centipedes. Then he stepped into the controls, and seconds later the bridge was sealed off. They can break through eventually, but Yerks are rigidly structured. All commands must come from the bridge. They will not have an auxiliary control. I hugged Cassie close, disbelieving. I had seen her die, hadn't I? What are we doing? I asked the Andalite. I'm currently broadcasting a request for help to any and all Andalite fleet elements. Your guys can save us? No, he said, but they may be able to save your people. What we can do is make the arrival of the Andalite fleet less dangerous for them and more beneficial for your kind. How are you going to do that? The Andalite didn't answer. Instead, he ordered a transparent panel to appear. I was looking out at Earth. I could see the North American continent clearly. We had lifted off and flown into orbit without my noticing a thing. And then there was a gorilla. It was just there, squatting in the corner.
"Oh, this is wrong!"
The angry, grating voice from nowhere cried again.
"This isn't it at all!"
"What's that voice?" I asked. "And what's a gorilla doing here?" "Gorilla? I'm a gorilla? Ah, I'm a gorilla!" "Marco?" It was his voice, coming directly from the gorilla. "It's coming apart quickly now," Cassie said, still staring weirdly around, like nothing she was seeing was real. "Axe, what is all this? You're the alien, man. What is going on?" The Andalite winced a little at the question. Then, obviously reluctant to admit ignorance, he said, "I do not know." He looked at Cassie with both stalk eyes. "Perhaps she does." "It's all a part of it," Cassie said in a sort of whisper. "It's coming apart." "There it is, the Yerk pool ship," the Andalite announced. "What now?" I demanded. "Now I will aim every weapon this ship possesses, and it possesses a great many very powerful weapons, and I will annihilate the pool ship and every Yerk on it. In 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2...
"Oh, all right,
the disembodied voice cried.
Stop it, stop it!"
A thing, an alien, I suppose, something, anyway, that looked an awful lot like a small dinosaur with the skin of a prune, appeared. The Andalite stepped back from the controls, ready to shoot this latest enemy. He fired. The energy beam traveled half the distance to the alien, then froze, simply stopped.
"It was the girl, wasn't it?"
The prune thing said, rolling its green-rimmed eyes upward.
"She corrupted the time flow."
Now a second figure appeared. He could have been a little old man, if you ignored the fact that he was a kind of bluish and glowing. I had the sense that he was no such thing, but that was his appearance. This creature, this old man, laughed.
It's not so easy, is it, Drode?
"You cheated me, Ellimist!"
The Drode snapped.
"We had a deal, a trade-off. You were allowed to meddle with the timeline of the Falakadrat situation, and we, my Master Crayak and I, were to be allowed to tempt this young jackal here."
He stabbed a finger at me. "I kept my bargain," the Ellimist said. "I have done nothing to bring about this result. The girl is an anomaly. She is subtemporarily grounded. You were careless."
"She's a freak of nature!"
the Drode screamed. The Ellimist nodded. "Yes, she is," Marco said. "What is going on here?" He was no longer a gorilla. "I'm pretty sure I was dead. Then I'm a gorilla."
"Oh, I see it now! I see it now!"
the Drode said, ignoring Marco, ignoring all of us.
"Subtle as always, Ellimist. Your meddling came before, didn't it? How could we have not seen it? Elfangor's brother? His time-shifted son? This anomalous girl here? And the son of Visser One's host body? A group of 6 supposedly random humans that contains those 4! You stacked the deck!"
Did I? The Ellimist laughed. That would have been very clever of me.
The Drode spat in disgust.
"You knew the girl was an anomaly! You knew she was subtemporarily grounded! And you knew that whatever timeline I built, her presence would eventually destabilize it! She knew from the start that the timeline had shifted! She felt it! I might as well have terminated this exercise then! I saw the sudden inexplicable transportation of the mother. I thought, well, it's a glitch! The hands morphing to tiger, all the little breakdowns of logic and sequence, I still thought it might hold together!"
Cassie said, "Is anyone going to tell us what is going on here?" The Ellimist winked at her, and suddenly, alive, in the room with us, were Rachel and that kid Tobias. "Does this feel more right, Cassie?" the Ellimist asked. She nodded. "This is everyone. Only Tobias should be..." As I watched in amazement, Tobias seemed to melt, to shift, to dwindle. In seconds there was a hawk where he had been.
"Most creatures live entirely within their timeline," the Ellimist said, "like a person trapped in a single room. They see only what is within those 4 walls. Others, like yourself, Cassie, can see beyond those walls, can see other rooms as though the walls were translucent. You felt the change. You sensed that things were not right. You could see only dimly, but still you could see beyond. You could see what should be, where you belonged, and without consciously knowing it, you were working to repair what had been torn apart, to reconstitute time as it should have been. You were a virus in the software. You degraded the subtle workings of the Drode's artificial time shunt." "I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about," Cassie said. You were in this timeline, but of another. That is an anomaly, an impossibility. One of the two timelines was doomed to fail. You grounded the true timeline, and thus, this timeline began to fall to pieces.
Who are you two? I demanded of the Ellimist and the Drode.
He's an old cheat,
The Drode snapped.
there are rules, Ellimist.
Yes, and I obeyed them. I allowed you to create this alternate timeline. And in this timeline, these humans and this Andalite came very close to annihilating the Yeerk presence. You suspended the exercise, not me. You can continue this timeline, or allow these young ones to return to their own times.
The Drode's face was twisted with hatred.
Krayak will have him yet.
He was talking about me. I knew it suddenly. I knew who I was. I knew it all. I was myself once more, leader of the Animorphs. With that knowledge came a sledgehammer of guilt. It was all my fault. I had weakened. I'd said yes to the Drode. I'd given in. Marco, Rachel, Cassie, Tobias, all dead. At least in this reality. Because I had weakened and taken the Drode's offer.
Perhaps, Drode, perhaps Krayak will have him, the Ellimist said. But, then again, perhaps he will have Krayak.
The Drode disappeared. The six of us, the Animorphs, stood there on the wrecked bridge of the blade ship, with the nearly all-powerful creature called the Ellimist. At least we'd have won it in this timeline, I said. He shook his head.
Yes, but you all would have died, and millions of humans too, before the victory.
I gave in, I whispered. I gave in.
You have been strong for a long time, he said.
He shouldn't have to be, Rachel erupted angrily. None of us should have to. This is enough. This has gone on too long.
Tobias said. I wouldn't have done it, would I? I couldn't have ever gone to the sharing. That was wrong. No way.
Of course you wouldn't,
Rachel growled. I said, Ellimist, is there anything better in our real timeline? Will it happen any better there? Will it at least ever end? The Ellimist looked at me, just at me, sadly, I thought, pitying.
It will end, he said. It will end.
I wanted to ask him more, but I knew that was all I'd get. So what happens now? Cassie asked. The Ellimist took her hand and held it affectionately.
What will happen now? Only you will ever recall so much as a dim memory of this timeline.
Cassie nodded, as though she'd half expected him to say that. But I'll say nothing about it. Tobias can't know that he might have become a voluntary controller, and Jake can't know that he ever weakened enough to take the Drode's deal.
You are wise, the Ellimist said.
Yeah, and I sure don't want to know that I ever dated Marco, Rachel added. How do we get back? I asked. How do we... What words?
One is Krayak. The other is please.
I wanted to say no. I wanted to say no. I opened my mouth to speak.
Oh, forget it. Never mind,
the Drode said angrily.